I tried to corral our next few presenters into talking specifically about LLMs in the enterprise, and they pretty much fought me vehemently. But what we're going to talk about is how LLMs can be used in the enterprise, what the current situation is of that. Chris Brown, who's a partner of ours and helped us with our IPA engine, and I'll talk about that in a little bit real quick before he comes up. Great colleague. We talk a lot about what's going on in the industry, and also a great personal friend. He's going to come up and talk about what his company is doing with enterprise today for LLMs and more generally generative AI and other AI. Because we use that term AI so loosely, and it means so many different things. We'll try to, as we're talking about use cases, we'll try to walk you through how those fit into the overall, my favorite, Venn diagrams. And then we have other partners coming up after the break. Cisco and TalkDesk, they're going to talk about, I tried to nail them down to LLMs as well, but they're also going to start with LLMs and work their way to basic generative AI, and how they've purpose-built this technologies into their products. So WebEx is going to talk about how it's built into their WebEx product, and TalkDesk, our contact center as a service partner, is going to talk about how they've put it into the contact center. I've been working on that for quite some time. So what I wanted to do first was show you guys, these are some slides that I show every year, and I didn't want to leave them out this year. We've built an engine that's, we started on this journey probably about six and a half years ago at this point. We knew we had to do some type of AI because it was the new term out there. And ultimately what we did, we hired Chris and his firm to work with us and concentrate on our fastest growing pieces of our business and how we could automate incident management. We knew we couldn't keep adding people at this problem. So this is what we were trying to keep up with. So our SD-WAN networks have been growing pretty astronomically. In the beginning of this year, it's been 15%. But that 15% is not indicative of the speed in which our current customers are asking us to deploy. We just had one customer that came on board, and within 4 months, we had 1,200 sites moved over to our SD-WAN platform. So the speed in which customers are asking us today is usurping the volume, which is a pretty interesting trend. And then our POTS transformation, affectionately known as POTS in a box, that continues to grow wildly. So these are the numbers that we've put together that have our IPA engine, and IPA stands for Intelligent Process Automation. So for those of you that have seen this before, it comes out of a long journey of many successes and lots of failures, and figuring out how we can best merge together certain machine learning algorithms, so one question, one answer AIs, with a bunch of automation in between that can interrogate the network automatedly and make decisions. And that AI actually sits and reads our incident tickets all day long. So it's kind of like a helper on the shoulder of all of our NOC personnel, kind of, poking them on the cheek to say, hey, look at this one, or hey, I'm taking this one away from you, you're way too slow. So that's what these numbers represent. So a daily average incident tickets that are presented to our NOC is about 2,600. That's a 48% year-over-year growth, which is pretty amazing. Almost 2,000 of those are auto-resolved. So that little AI engine I talked about sitting on all our analysts' shoulder, they're doing 2,000 of them, which represents, if you see on the right there, 74% of all those incidents. And our effectiveness there has grown 33% over the past year. And the amount of tickets that we're auto-closing is up 49%. I usually highlight the last column because it's always my favorite, and it's about how more efficient we're making our personnel that are in our network operations center and our analysts, our tier 2 and tier 3 folks. And that's always gone up some drastic number, 70%, 57%, 80% over the past 3 years. And this year it was down, which I immediately I very politely asked my whole team to rerun the numbers, and something's wrong, and something's wrong. And they finally came back to me and said, nothing's wrong. It's because you're pushing so much automation. We're actually taking a lot of incidents away and taking those tasks that are wasting our analysts' time away from them. So it ends up being a really good story, and it's built around, we took, and you can see it in this slide here, blue is 2022, orange is 2023, and gray is 2024. This is daily average incidents per day worked by a human. And you can see in 2023, the orange, we were way high because this is when our POTS transformation solution exploded. It took us somewhat by surprise on the automation side, so we had some catching up to do. And as you can see, we kind of leveled that off between 2022, 2023 at the end of the year, and that was due to a whole bunch of automation that we actually put into not only the network but our IPA engine, and it's been super successful. So that is what's behind these numbers and how we got to a negative number there, which now I'm proud of after everyone explained it to me. As we go into the LLM models, I just wanted to show you this is why the presenters today were pushing back on me so hard. I was like, LLMs, 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 that's what we got to talk about. It's the hottest thing, and enterprises isn't really using them. But they all said, they all very correctly were telling me, hey, it's not just about LLMs, it's generative AI in general. LLMs are just a piece. So you have your generative AI environment, you have a bunch of models. This is what we built our engine on, a bunch of different models. And then LLMs came out, which a lot of you are familiar with. And then ChatGPT and some of those, they're a different version of LLMs, or a very specific version of them. So just keep that in mind as we go through our talk today. And on the environment of LLMs, so as you can see here, I don't know if you guys can actually see it, because I can't see if you're actually here still. The large language models have reached the peak of the Gartner hype cycle. So I call this the chutes and ladders diagram from that game when we were kids. LLMs are about to go down the chute, so they're going into my favorite trough of disillusionment. But they're going to break a record in how quickly they get out to the plateau of productivity. So if you're not thinking about it now, you should be thinking about it pretty soon, how you use them. The other thing I'll point out is at the very beginning of the hype cycle, it's just about to get all the hype, is edge LLMs. So all the large language models today are basically in these big data centers. They're in hyperscalers, or you have to put them in your data center. But that's going to start moving to the edge, and the VMware folks were mentioning that as well. We're seeing, and Gartner's seeing, and the industry is starting to push those closer to the edge so we can make these generative AI decisions on data close to where it is and then get rid of it. Get rid of that data. You made the decision, take the decision, and go put that into the cloud. So that's the way this is trending. In the LLM space, this starts out at 2020, and here we are at 2024, where proprietary LLMs in the enterprise and bespoke LLMs that you train and keep closed in your network, they're going to be much more accurate than using open source LLMs. We talked about hallucinations before, and actually I'll talk about it in a minute. But those things happen in open source LLMs. The thing you have to ask yourself, and Chris will probably cover this, how perfect do you need to be in your application? So there's these open source LLMs out there that don't cause you any work to use, and is your application okay with the risk of not getting the right answer all the time? And I could speak to this a little bit as we went through our incident management and IPA engine building. We were trying to get to perfection on what we do with tickets. So we had this traffic sorting model that was actually trained to look at all these incidents that come in and make decisions on where they should go, or make decisions on if they should close it out, or where they should go interrogate. And we were trying to get to a perfect score, or at least a 90% score. And finally, it dawned on me that, I wait for sometimes my analysts to make a really dumb decision sometimes, and I wait 2 hours for that. Why not have this machine make a dumb decision in 30 seconds or under 30 seconds, and then reiterate it again, and get it right and learn quicker? Because we all learn from making mistakes, and we all make mistakes, and if the machine makes a mistake, it just learns quicker. So that's part of what's really important on this. You can see here that the model-related generative AI impact radar for organizations today. It's littered with all different types of LLMs. So Gartner sees these LLMs coming into your organization, whether you like it or not. Gartner defines what you're going to do. You didn't know that, did you? But yes, so that it's coming. It's coming as a tidal wave towards you, and most of those are nearing the impact phase where it's 0 years, 0 to 1 year. And then I'll call out on the bottom right there, there's hallucination management, which to me means a lot of different things, and maybe tonight it'll mean something much different. And here it is in the news. So I don't know if Jamie's still here. Jamie and I are members of the CNBC Technology Council. It's a great organization for us to work with. We get great speakers, and the people from CNBC that you see on TV, they're really genuinely nice people and super brilliant and smart. And I love when they put stuff out because they do their research and they're talking to people that are actually doing these things. And they were talking about, the biggest problem isn't hallucinations in AI. So I'll read some of this. Most companies are 77% successful on generative AI pilots today within the enterprise, which was a big number, I thought. But the biggest thing besides the hallucinations, it wasn't even mentioned as one of the criteria that was problematic. 80% of them cited data privacy and security concerns as the top challenge in scaling their AI that they put into their network, which is really interesting. Meanwhile, 45% of those organizations actually encountered an unintended data exposure, so a data leak, when implementing these AI solutions. So something just to keep in mind as you enter into this realm, that data all of a sudden becomes places it's really difficult to control. And this was illustrated by Microsoft the end of last year. They leaked 38 terabytes of data from Copilot in just one day. So a lot of data. And here, much like I was talking about today, and Jonathan Brill's footnote today, how his numbers could be wrong. Here's another article from CNBC, not 2 weeks later, that totally contradicts what I just talked about. But this is talking about, how this is more realistic from what I see from even my colleagues in the CNBC Tech Council. For the most part, and this is the greatest quote I heard in that council, a lot of very powerful people who are very cutting edge technology-wise, and everyone talking about they're putting AI and LLMs into the enterprise. And the greatest quote I heard was, I think this was actually the CIO at NBA, believe it or not. He was like, this is just like teenage sex. We're all talking about it, but none of us are doing it. So pretty impactful. But there was a great quote within this article that I wanted to point out. I won't read the whole thing to you, but the point here was, and the spirit of it is, if you're going to go into generative AI within your enterprise, take a pause, and if your plan is to just introduce generative AI in your organization solely for productivity, that's going to be a mess. Or statistically, it's going to be a mess. You want to strategically align it with your business objectives. So make sure it's aligned with what you're doing. And Chris is going to come up now and talk about some of that alignment and what he does with different enterprises today. And before he does, I should have had this slide previously, but this will come in handy. This is AI on your device. So HJ talked quite a bit about yesterday and this morning, or this afternoon, AI on Samsung tablets, phones. Now it's in the PC as well. So I don't know if you saw the announcement, I think it was 2 weeks ago, or it was whenever Max and I and our team were at Dell Tech World, and we actually witnessed Michael Dell talk about it, and at the same time, in concert with Microsoft announcing their Surface that was Copilot enabled. So now this stuff is coming to your laptop. So buckle up. So with that, I'll bring Chris up. Please have a round of applause for Chris. Oh. Thank you, buddy.
Cheers, dude. Thank you. I have a round of applause. I haven't done anything yet. Hello, everyone. It feels good to be back. It feels really good to be back. For those who are veterans of this session, and you've heard me up here before, and hello again. It's nice to be back. You'll remember that we started our business about 10 years ago, started our AI business about 10 years ago, and we started coming to these conferences about 6 years ago, and we were the weird guys in the room, right? Now we're sort of like trendy mainstream, right? So we're now feeling pretty cool about ourselves here because we're starting to come into fashion, which has never been said about me before. So I'm quite enjoying that time. For those who don't know me and haven't been to a session before, my name's Chris Brown. I'm part of the intelligence team. And intelligence is an organization that is solely focused on the custom deployment of applied AI applications. As Ed said, I'm going to try and put LLMs into context because that was what the brief was. And I thought back about that a little bit because I don't think it's a wide enough discussion. So I'm going to try and change the discussion a little bit to widen how we think about AI, maybe change the perspective on how we think about AI. And then I'll finish off with a couple of examples, always, as we always do, to make it real. So just to stimulate some imagination. Ultimately, what I want to try and do is change the conversation from a technology perspective, and just like the quote, Ed, it was perfect setup, Ed, I hadn't seen that slide, perfect setup. Change the conversation from technology to applied AI. And what do I mean by applied AI? Really easy. I mean any AI that underpins real-world applications that drive return of investment for your business. I don't care if they are LLMs, CNNs, LTSMs, GANs. I don't care what the model is. I don't care if it's supervised learning, unsupervised learning, RAG, reinforcement learning, or whatever buzzword you've heard from AI. I don't care. We don't care. What we care about is that it underpins, and I'm okay with productivity, so you'll get some different opinions. So it underpins productivity gains within your organization, or it changes the way you engage with your clients, or it improves your product, and we're going to hear from Brian, and we're going to hear from John a little bit later about how AI is improving their product, or it even creates new markets, new growth. That is the AI that we get excited about at Intelligence. But let me start with the brief, because the brief from Ed was put LLMs into context. And Ed did a great job. He had it wasn't quite a Venn diagram, but it was like that bubble chart with, I think it was generative AI, and then it was foundation models, LLMs, and then ChatGPT as a specific example of an LLM. And it was accurate. That is accurate. But it's not comprehensive. And you're gonna hear me tell you that the slide behind me right now, it's a bit rich of me to tell you that Ed's slide wasn't comprehensive, because this is the least comprehensive slide that I've got in my entire presentation. Because the truth is, AI has so many technical layers that it can get super confusing. And very often, they get intertwined and talked about as the same thing. So one example I'll give you with that is LLMs. So LLMs and generative AI get talked about in the same sentence as if they're the same thing. But the truth is that LLMs aren't just good at generative AI. They're not just good at generating content. They're also really good at classification challenges. But nobody really talks about that because we get mixed up with these conversations. And there's so many. It's just so many different layers. There's the layers that you see up here that I managed to get on my slide. And this slide's so lacking in breadth and exhaustive examples because I just didn't figure out how to legibly put it all on one slide, right? So you've got the pieces that are up here. So you've got model types, you've got what's the business challenge, you've got what consumption method, how am I going to buy or build or consume the AI? And that's a topic we'll talk about later because it's super, super important. And that's before you get into, are we using unsupervised learning, are we using supervised learning, are we going to use RAG, right? What's the hypothesis that we're trying to solve? What's the technical hypothesis? What's the target variables? It's just a massive plethora of AI confusion. And LLMs, inside that, you know what I wish I had? I wish I had that star chart from the astronaut. Well, I just wish I was as cool as that astronaut. But I wish I had that star chart from the astronaut earlier because that's what the multi-layer technology layers of AI look like. And LLMs inside that layer are one star. They're one model. Yes, they're a massively powerful model, and there's billions of dollars of investment that's gone into creating commercial models that are super powerful, that can do really cool things. But when you think about AI holistically, they're just one choice within many, many choices within your technical solution of how you can apply AI within your business. But I'm going to give you some examples. But this list is in no way exhaustive because slides aren't big enough. But you will see that it can be both generative and it can be classification challenges. So when you think about LLMs, don't always think about them solving generative challenges. I'm not going to go through this entire list because you can read it behind me. But I will say I could give you a list much bigger than this of challenges that LLMs are just not suitable to solve. But they're still impactful business solutions that you can apply within your business. Anything to do with image, classification, or generative, no good with LLMs. Anything to do with time series, anything to do with finding patterns within structured data, it's not a challenge for an LLM. So I would urge you when you're thinking about what does AI mean for my business, where can I apply it, I would urge you not to constrain yourself with the question of what can LLMs do for me? That would be my first thing. Don't constrain yourself to that question. I would rather urge yourself to think about what AI can do for my business. Because the only thing that matters in the context of a business, I'm not talking about, I missed the first keynote of the futurist of AI, and AI matters in lots of different ways, right? But from a business perspective, the only thing that matters for your business is how can I apply solutions that are going to drive return of investment? Very few CEOs that I know, and we talk to a lot of them, care about the model that you used, or the training methodology that you used, or how you got your CI/CD working, and how you're keeping the training real time, and are you doing it monthly, or are you doing it daily? They don't really care, quite frankly. They just don't care. They care about results. Like the numbers Ed showed earlier, right? I keep going back to your presentation there, but the numbers, that's what matters. Can I service my customers with a better network that's fixed more quickly by using AI? Do you care what model? Not really. Not really, as long as it works. So I want to try and convince you over the next 10 minutes to not get distracted by the multi-dimensional technical capabilities or technical challenges or technical choices you have with AI, but to focus on the power that AI solutions can bring in terms of delivering transformation for your business. Because, and you help me even more, because someone just said 5% don't even go to production, right? Gartner are telling us that 85% of AI projects never make it into production. I heard the number before. Did you say 45% go into pilot? Was that what the number was, Ed, I think, from the CNBC? 45% go into pilot. There's a huge chasm between being in an innovation center, being in a lab, and being in production. But the only place that AI will drive ROI is when you put it in production, and 85% of projects never make it there and never give you a return. And it's our view at Intelligence that changing how you engage in the AI conversation will put you in a much better position to be inside the 15% of success. All right, now I have to level with you. I'm going to have to come clean. We have got 10 years of experience. We started on the new wave of AI really, really early. Like I said, we were the weird kids on the block, right? We're now getting a little bit mainstream and trendy, right? But we started really early. But you don't have to have this level of experience. In fact, you don't have to have any experience whatsoever to understand everything I just told you. You need to know nothing. Everything I just said, you can find out and more with a couple of prompts into ChatGPT. There's literally nothing I just told you can't find out. Because knowing all of that top AI line theory is just not the hard part. In fact, it's super easy. It's really, really easy. Talking the talk, you can find out in 3 prompts. But walking the walk to successfully cross that chasm of doom, that 85% chasm of doom, that's where the real expertise comes in. Firstly, by sitting really hard and thinking really carefully about where AI can impact your business. And my guess is, as leaders of your business, you're going to have a very big personal role to play in that conversation within your organization. The second thing is make sure you have the right consumption method and the right skills and talent in order to cross the chasm on the subject area you think is going to be most impactful for your business. I want to put the argument forward and try and convince you. I can't even see you, like everyone else has said. I don't even know if you're still there, right? But I'm going to try and convince you that if we change the way the AI conversation is engaged in, we will grow that 15% of success. And that hypothesis is to derive ROI from AI, business leaders should not be focused on understanding all of the technical jargon and all of the multidimensional layers we just talked about, just so you can win debates at round tables and parties and look like the cleverest person in the room. It's not going to make a difference to your business because anyone can do it with a couple of prompts. Your focus should be on only 3 aspects. Understanding, and this is the big one, understanding your business, your marketplace, about where AI can truly make a difference. Select the most appropriate consumption methodology for your AI, and then make the right choice to either buy it, to partner, or to build it in-house. If you get those 3 things right, you will put yourself in a great position to be in that 15%. Because no ChatGPT prompt, no matter how hard you try, is going to provide a silver bullet answer to any of those questions. That is where your focus, your brain power, that's exactly where you should be putting it. And I'm going to walk through them right now. If we look at the first bit, and I talk about this a lot, and it's not the first time I've talked about it here, it's not the first time I've talked about it anywhere, because it's just so critical. How do you identify the targets? Well, the good news is, although the technical complexities are large, and there's loads of multi-layers, and there's loads of buzzwords, and loads of hype, and loads of dimensions, and Venn diagrams, it's just really hard, the commercial understanding of where AI can help is actually much easier. It's much easier. And you'll see on this diagram, AI can roughly do 3 things. So we can get nearly an exhaustive map of where AI can help your business, at least to start that imagination going with a 9-box model. It can classify things or detect things, where detection is a binary classification. It can forecast things, predict things. And obviously the new kid on the block, it can generate things. That's the 3 things AI can do, those 3 things. And it can do those 3 things on 3 types of data. It can see things, so images, video. It can listen, read, and understand things. So here we're talking, if we want the technical term, which we don't because nobody cares anymore, right, is NLP, right? So this is where large language models come in. So that's audio and unstructured language. Or it can work on structured data patterns to find historic patterns, to predict future patterns, to classify things. That's it. 3 things on 3 types of data. Now, to be super exhaustive, I will say there are solutions where we chain things together, and we chain different types of data together, or we chain different types of models together. But on the whole, you can start to use this map to really understand where AI can make a difference in your business. I put a few examples up there. I'm going to talk about a few later, but it just starts to put some things in context about where you can start to apply AI. Leave the technical conversation, leave the multi-dimensional technical conversation, leave it to the data. If you're not a data scientist and you're not an ML engineer, just don't worry about it. Let them worry about it. Focus on where you can apply AI, because that is the experience and the skill that's going to be needed to target the AI correctly within your business. The second key factor I talked about was consumption. And you've broadly got 3 options of consuming AI today. You've got off-the-shelf, and Brian and John are going to talk to you about off-the-shelf capabilities in a second. You've got model as a service. So these are foundation models that billions of dollars of investment have been put into. They've created great general models that you can then tune with different techniques. And they're offered commercially. GPT is a prime example of that. And then you have open source models. And this is one I don't agree with Ed's, where they're less accurate than model as a service. Maybe true in LLM, maybe, on certain applications, but not across the board. Each of these are completely viable solutions that bring different aspects and have different considerations of a project. They all impact very non-technical pieces across your project. And it's a topic, it's a subject that I think gets overlooked massively. And if you make a mistake from the outset on this decision, it'll be a misstep that you will never be able to recover from. So it's a super important decision to make. I'm not going to go through exactly all the combinations of what it does, but let me just pick out a few examples. If we think about off-the-shelf solutions tend to be fast. They tend to be relatively cost efficient. They don't require any major AI skills. You don't need companies like us to use off-the-shelf capabilities. They can be super powerful. Because all of the heavy AI work, and I'm really happy John and Brian are going to be here later because they're going to tell you some of the heavy AI work they've done, is already done. The work has been done, and really you're consuming this result as software. It looks like it presents itself as software as a service. So the legals and regulatory pieces look like software as a service. So really compelling way to put AI into your business. Model as a service and open source models, these 2 methodologies are the only real way to get full custom trained models on your data set. And when that matters, this is really your only 2 options. Model as a service is using foundation models that are offered commercially, and they are the fastest, cheapest way to a custom model for sure, but you've got to think about things like data leaks. So if you have a legal, regulatory, or just a company policy of not letting data leave your firewall, you can't use model as a service because you cannot put it behind the firewall. So if you're not willing to put that data and you've got worries about data leaks, and it looks like from that article from CNBC, lots of people do, model as a service is not an option. GPT is not an option for you because you cannot host that inside your firewall. It's provided as a service in their data centers. Open source models are the opposite. Open source models take more time. You've got to look after all the hosting of that model, but you can put it behind your firewall. The legal regulatory issues, you can put it in the country that you want to deploy it in. If you've got a national data issue where data can't leave the country, you can put it in the country where you need it. You own the IP. For some companies, that's super important. For off-the-shelf and model as a service, you can't own the intellectual property of your solution, not of the model. That belongs to the people that put all the hard work in to make it in the first place. But with open source models, you own the intellectual property of the solution that you deliver. And for certain industries, gaming specifically, that is super, super important. So this is a subject in its own right. I could speak about for 25 minutes on this. But just to say, it's a very, very important decision to get right before you even start your project. The third thing I talked about was how am I going to purchase? How am I going to engage in a project in order to be successful? And that is heavily linked. It's heavily linked to the way you consume. Off the shelf is pretty straightforward. That's clearly a buy option because it's your only option. You might want some specialist help in terms of implementation and integration and all of that piece, but you've got to buy it because it's being offered as a product. So that's pretty straightforward. For model as a service and open source, here you've got a choice. The choices are you either partner with experts to help you put that in place, because deploying AI solutions, the 85% chasm of failure, is because it's like no other software project you've ever done before, and it needs very specialist skills, ML ops, ML engineers, data scientists. So you either partner with experts that have that capability, or you go on the journey. If you're an AI forward organization, your strategy is AI forward, and you start to build those teams internally to give you that capability to execute and to execute successfully. So before I head into just a very few examples, let me just summarize what I just said. Anybody can know about the high-level, top-line AI buzzwords with a few prompts into GPT. Don't waste your time trying to win that battle. It's not going to move you forward. Changing your perspective and focusing on where you can apply it, what consumption method you're going to use, and how you're going to partner, build, or buy to get it executed is the best way that you will succeed in order to drive ROI within your business. I promise. I've seen it hundreds of times. If you focus on these three things, you'll put yourself ahead of the game. Okay, I said I'd finish with what are the popular solutions that everybody's asking for today. And I'm going to run through these really quickly and leave 5 minutes for Q&A if anyone is still in the room. I can't see, right, if someone's still here. What are people asking for us today? I'll start with, if you'd asked me 3 years ago what I thought about chatbots, my friendly, kind, public answer would have been they are almost never the right answer for an end user. I understand the force field that they provide between mass inbound communications and limited resources in order to handle that. But their limited decision tree capabilities, their narrow understanding of context always ended up with a crappy customer resolution. It ended up with increased frustration and low engagement. But now we've got the ability to truly create free-form, non-rule-based chatbots. And I think we need a rebranding, because chatbot just makes me I still have a cringe effect when we talk about chatbots, right? So we need a rebrand. Actually, I worked for, a long time ago, I worked for BT, and it feels like this. I wasn't going to talk about this. And I was there at the launch of WAP. I'm now aging myself. Does anyone remember WAP? Right? And in the UK, it was BT, ride the BT cellnet. Ride the net, ride the BT cellnet. It was the biggest overpromise and the massive underdeliver you've ever known in your entire life. And I feel like chatbots need a rebrand because it was a bit like that. Anyway, that was a bit of a waste of time. So we can now make if anybody cares, and I hope you don't by now, using RAG on LLMs, you can create and you can inject so much information and power into creating unstructured conversations on any subject that you have the documentation for that can create either the best HR customer representative, the best customer service representative, the best network operations representative that your company has ever seen, and you can infinitely scale it. It's massively powerful, and we're doing a lot of this today in different areas. HR onboarding, for some reason, went off on one. I didn't even realize the absorption. We learn a lot of things because we do a lot of different projects at different areas. The absorption that it takes to onboard somebody within your organization. Not just for them to get up to speed, but the amount of energy and the amount of distraction they create to the people around them, asking them a ton of questions. Well, by using RAG on LLM, actually, I'm going to use RAG on LLM. Does anyone know The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, where he puts the lever in the back of his head and goes, "Poof, I know Kung Fu." Do you remember that? Just shout if you remember, because I can't even see if you're there, right? I remember. That's what RAG on LLM is like. Forget about technology. It's like, boom, I know Kung Fu. If you load all of your HR policies, all of your contracts, all of your confidentiality agreements, all of when you get paid, when you don't get paid, LLMs or chatbots can answer all of those questions in free-form text with massive accuracy. So this is a big one that we get asked for now. It doesn't have to just be on HR. We do it on customer engagement. And I think TalkDesk are going to talk about how they're doing it in the contact center today. Massively powerful. Quality assurance through visual inspection. This one's super easy to understand. This is, can you look at my product either with an image or a video and tell me if it's got a problem or not? Has it got the quality level that I need in order for it to be shipped, or have I got a quality assurance problem? We do this in industries that are just so varied you won't imagine. We do it for silicon chips to spot if we've got cracks in silicon chips on the manufacturing plant. So they're so fine, the cracks, that they electrically test, but they go in the field and they fail. Can we spot them? Yep, you can. We do it for road signs. I think I talked about that a couple of years ago. We still do it for road signs, and not just road signs, but bollards, any kind of asset on roads where people drive with a GoPro in their car, they send us the video, and we tell them what job sheet that they need to go and work on, what's graffiti, what's broken, what's fallen over, what's not there anymore. We just finished a project down in Alabama with a trucking company, and their challenge. So one thing I missed out was like, AI can be really complex technically, but the thing that I will say about the challenges we solve, they all have one thing in common. They're poetically simple. Is there crack in this silicon? Is there not? What road signs do I need to fix? It's not. It's really dead easy to put into context as long as you know your business and where your challenges lie. And so we did this one with a trucking company, which was, can you make sure these trucks don't move? They don't go a single inch unless the load is correctly tarpaulined on the back of the truck. That was it. That was the entire challenge. Technically complex? Yeah, technically complex. From a business point of view, super simple to understand because it removes my insurance liability, it improves my product quality, it improves my redeliveries. Can you just make sure the tarpaulin's on the truck and don't let it move unless it is? That's quality assurance through visual inspection. And the last one's quite related to the first one, but it's a little bit different. Email tagging and classification. This can be used anywhere where you've got large amounts of inbound. It doesn't have to be email. It's called email up here. It can be WhatsApp messages. It can be inbound text messages. It doesn't matter if we've got inbound. It can be audio, actually, because we can transcribe it. But it can be any inbound communications that you've got. The first stage is we tag it. What is the subject? So you've got subject or inbound communications coming in on lots of different subjects. Is it about new orders? Is it about billing? Is it about fix? Is it about something else? So first of all, you can tag it so you can get quite an efficient sorting office at the front end. That can create some benefits. But the biggest benefit it does, it splits off those communications, because downstream, you're probably going to have a different reaction, a different team, a different set of information that's required. And the second stage model is we go in and we syntactically look at that information. We understand what it's saying. We pull out keywords. I talk about classification with NLP, right? So LLMs using NLP. I told you not to worry about the technology. You can start to pull out the understanding of what and the keywords from a classification and start to put that into structured data to put it in an order form and create the order without anybody touching it, or create the ticket because I know exactly what asset number it's on. So you can start to use classifications by going inside the email because you know the subject that you're going to want to tackle. So we do a lot of this as well today. So that is it. I did it with 54 seconds to spare. So we got 54 seconds for questions and answers. So that is the end of the presentation. 46 seconds if we want to take some questions.
So what would you recommend being the best way to almost brainstorm out a way to utilize AI in a company. You know, when you're looking at a total green field ahead of you, and you want to get to the point where you're saying, well, what do I want to put through? What do I want to do? What potential needs are there?
So a couple of things. One is you can either ask us to come do an AI Academy with you. So that's the first thing I'd ask you to do. All right, we'll come do that. The second thing is use the map. And the third thing is I've got a set of questions, 5 or 6 questions, that will fundamentally start to target where you can make a difference in your business. But honestly, if you sit there and go, this is the biggest pain in the ass in my business, right? Or if I could do this, it would set me ahead of the competition. They're not technical questions. They are absolute business strategy questions of what holds me back, what would differentiate me from the competition. And once you know that, let's have a look, right? Let's have a look on the map. Let's have a look at your data. And then we can start to work out, is it possible? You will soon be able to tell you whether it's possible or not, right? And with a couple of, even if you don't even want to talk to me ever again, which I could quite understand, right? You could even put your question into GPT and use AI to help you understand it. Can I solve this problem? Could I solve a problem? And you put it in generic terms. Obviously, you don't want to put your entire business data into GPT, especially not the free version, because that's public data. Don't do that, right? But you could put a generic question into GPT and say, oh, is this solvable? And it'll come back and say, yeah, you could solve it like this, 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 and this. Or, hey, the technology is not available right now to do that. And you'll get yourself an idea. But use the map. It can classify. Think about, I can detect things. I can classify, is it a cat? Is it a dog, right? Is it broken? Is it not? Whether that's vision, whether it's a communication. And just use that 3x3 box model. We might be able to try and send them out afterwards, right? And with the examples in, we can even just send that as a slide. And then start to think about where in my business are the biggest challenges that if I could solve them, I'd sleep better at night, or where could I grow my business and differentiate? That'll help me make the top line and the bottom line change. It's really nothing to do with technology, because I think you'll find most things can probably, that's a big statement. A lot of things can be solved.
So with onboarding, what success have you found? Because I could see 2 things coming into play and throwing a monkey wrench into that. First is the company has to have documented all the policies and procedures in which employees are learned, and my experience is that usually they don't. And so the employee or the new employee is going to come up with questions where there's no answers that are documented. And the second thing is the lack of human interaction with the onboarding process. And maybe I'm dating myself, but for an older generation, they like the interpersonal relationship when you're onboarding versus a machine or screen talking to you onboarding it.
2 great questions. Okay, let me take the first one first. AI is not magic. Right, we've said that from the very beginning, from 10 years ago. It's not witchcraft. It is brute force mathematics, right? And the first question I would ask myself if I was in the position, if I don't have this written down, is what do you do today? What do you do if you don't have a policy today? What are you going to do? Because if you haven't got a policy, how are you going to answer the question? Right? Someone's going to have to answer that question. And if that then de facto becomes your policy, write it down, feed the machine, right? So look at what you're doing today, but yes, you have to have policies in place for decisions and for questions, because it's not just going to make up, or it's not going to hallucinate, but it's not going to just make up an answer. I'll say, I don't know the answer to that. Or you could ask the AI to say, well, can we just be New York, because you said we were talking at lunch, can I just be New York compliant? And I've fed all documents that are New York. So I just want to be New York standard, right? That's my policy. So now you can start with that, and then you can tweak. But yes, you need it to be written down. The second one, in other conversations, and I didn't do it today, when I'm talking to technologists, like super deep data scientists and ML ops guys, right? Because they get really, really focused on data-driven architectures, streaming AI, data, streaming data into AI and streaming the answers out and making sure it's fast and responsive. But I always tell them not to forget about the third one, which is human-centric solution design. Because it has to fit the environment that you're going to put it in. Because if you don't overcome the change management and the change control and the human acceptance of a solution, you might have the best technical solution in the world, and no one wants to use it, and they hate it, right? So you have to remember that inside the process of your design. Now, if your environment is, I got a bunch of millennials, and if they speak to me, that's a disaster, then I have some kids. It's a disaster when I speak to them. It's like, why don't you text me? Because I'm on the sofa next, I don't know, right? So if you have that environment, create it for that environment. If you have an environment which is, hey, I need to have human interaction, create a solution that provides the human interaction person, so that's that supervisor, whoever's going to do the interacting with the question, give them, surface a whole load of data for them, make it easy, right? So that's still using AI to surface that. It's still making you more efficient. It's still making you have the answers and the accuracy that you want, but you're keeping the human interaction. Or make a solution where you allow the choice for the person that's asking the question of how they want it. So you have to build it for the environment that you're in. It's not just about the technology. At the end of the day, the end user of this is still a human in that instance. So human-centric solution design is really critical, not just the AI mumbo-jumbo that we all talk about that we can find out from ChatGPT. Any more? I've done you to death. Thank you very much, everyone.